Hello, everyone, and welcome to SuttonsDaze and to this week's canning chat. I am so excited to have you here. This is going to be fun. 7 pages of questions, okay? So grab yourself something to drink, grab a notepad and a pen, take some notes. Let's see what kind of trouble we can get into today. Okay, so first I want to address an answer that I had last week, okay, to a question that I had last week, and it was about sterilizing jars. A couple of viewers brought this to my attention, and I have a caveat here to my answers, okay? I tend to do a general statement for the most part, okay? And then I also tend to tie it in with what I believe. And both of those have to do with, approved methods. So when I was asked about sterilizing jars, pressure canning versus water bath canning, I said that you should sterilize your water bath jars. In my experience, 90% of what I water bath is for under 10 minutes, 10 minutes and under. So that's absolutely a requirement then at that point. But Jen and Little Red Hen Mom both left me a comment and said, whoa, wait a minute. The National Center for Home Food Preservation says that if you are water bathing your jars for more than 10 minutes, then you don't have to sterilize them. Okay, that's the rule. Make sure they're clean, but you don't have to sterilize them. That's according to the National Center for Home Food Preservation. I still say if you're water bathing them, sterilize them, okay? But, it's up to you. So thank you very much for bringing that to my attention, because I kind of go with the broad, the broad thing. And I don't, pickles maybe, but yeah, that's about it. Okay, so here we go. Pawpaw's Georgia Girl says, have you ever canned Brunswick stew? I've only found a couple people who have, and no real recipes. I have not canned for a video, but it is on my list of things to do for this fall, so stick around because I have a really good recipe for it. I love Brunswick stew. Cynthia Humphrey says, when canning tomatoes, I have always pressure canned them. Tonight I decided to steam can them. In the ball book, if you can tomatoes in their juice, it's 1 hour and 25 minutes, page 33 in the latest book. If you pack it in water, pardon me, it's 40 to 45 minutes. If you can it as seasoned sauce with onions and garlic, then it's a shorter time. It seems odd that plain old tomatoes canned in its own juice is so long. Why? Okay, so number one, if you are steam canning them, you can't. Those 2 times go over what is allowed for the steam canner, so don't steam can them, okay? But they have the science and they have the equipment to back up the science. And so there's probably a density issue, okay, with the sauce. When you create a sauce, it just becomes thicker in substance for the heat to get all the way through to the center to make sure that it kills all the bacteria, as opposed to the vegetable itself. So that is probably a majority of the reason why. But I don't honestly know their methodology, so that's the best I can guess. I hope that answers your question. Tina Hayes asks, I canned ugly chicken. Yeah, baby. And I have questions. I have a jiggler because I started canning. I have a question. I was wondering. I have a jiggler because I started canning. My question is, I take my heat down to where my jiggler is slowly jiggling. It doesn't stop, but it jiggles slow. Am I doing it right? You are doing it absolutely correct. You are awesome. Great question. You're doing fantastic. So yes, you got it right. Patricia Ann 47. New to canning. I canned chicken for the first time. The jars are almost cooled down and I see bubbles coming out from little opening between chicken pieces. Is that okay? Perfectly normal. You've canned this for, well, it didn't say, but either 75 or 90 minutes, depending on whether it was a pint or a quart. And so that is cooking it in the jar. And so it creates, bubbles because it's basically boiling. So it creates those bubbles, and that is absolutely normal. And it's a good thing. So great question. Christina McKee, question, I canned carrot cake jam and realized as I was thinking about it 11 hours later that I forgot the lemon juice. The jars had all sealed. I ended up throwing the jam out. Could I have reprocessed and canned the jam instead of throwing it out? Thank you so very much. I mean, theoretically, yes. Theoretically, you could have reprocessed it in that time frame, okay? The concern is that then you are reheating the pectin, adding the juice that it might not set properly, okay? But then you would just have to play with it and possibly add a little bit more pectin. But for the time frame, you were fine. Next time, you know, I got to create cheat sheets for you guys. But yeah, theoretically that would work, but you would probably have to add pectin to it, because by reheating it up and adding the lemon juice, you're cooking the pectin more, and that can cause issues with its set. Caroline Chapman question, can you give a big knife recommendation? The big knife that you use to cut large roast up. My knives are useless. I absolutely can. I have a link in the description box below with my knife for cutting up big meat, for cutting up meat. I love this knife. It's actually a boning knife, okay? But I love this knife. It's kind of medieval looking, you know, but it's great. It works fantastic. It's super easy to keep sharp, and I really love it. And I know some of our subscribers have also purchased it, and they really love it. So check out the link below. Thanks for asking. Carla Palmer says, I'm just getting supplies to start canning. I noticed some things are water bath canned, some are pressure canned. Can everything be pressure canned with 1-inch headspace? No, not at all. Not even close. Nope. So I'm going to recommend, Carla, that you go to the National Center for Home Food Preservation. I will have that link down below. You want to go there and you want to look up the different items for canning, okay? Because headspace is very important, because that's factored into the time and the, you know, that you are actually canning it. If you were to try to pressure can jam, you would destroy it. So no, everything cannot be pressure canned. You can't pressure can pickles. You would end up with mushy, vinegary cucumbers. Okay. So it really depends. You know, these processes are tested and true. Trust the process and do it the right way, and you will be very happy. Leslie Standish, canning frozen meatballs that were store-bought? Question. No, because I wager a guess that 99.9% of commercially produced meatballs have some kind of grain in them, okay? And you can't do that. So that's not safe to can, so you would have to make your own. I have a meatball video I will throw down below so that you can check that out. I'll also link it up above. But no, you can't. Deborah Arrington. Okay, and I need to make sure everybody understands this is not a live chat. This is a pre-recorded video, okay? So you're not missing the live chat. But Deborah says, is the canning time for Mayo Coba beans the same as Pintos, black beans, etc., or should they even be canned at all? I've never seen them mentioned in any canning videos of the many I follow, and need to know before I mess something up and or waste time, money, and resources. Thanks. I understand completely. So Mayo Coba beans are just probably not as well-known, well-used, popular as pinto beans, okay? But Mayo Coba beans are soft and buttery and have a more mild taste than pinto beans. So when dried, they are a yellowish color, and once cooked, they turn a light tan and have a smooth, buttery taste. So I would liken them to a cross between lima beans and pinto beans, okay? And they're perfectly safe to can for the same time and everything else as you do, you know, other beans. So absolutely do it, enjoy it. Good question. Callie from Canada has been canning, but suddenly find there is a good chance I may be moving in approximately 6 months. Congratulations. What precautions or strategies should I take when moving my jars of processed food? Any ideas would be great. No, I cannot eat through all of it in the next 6 months. P.S. Life happens. Oh no, I wouldn't even try to eat through it in 6 months. So we have a lot of our viewers who have moved with their canned goods. And so I'm going to invite all of you to help me answer this question in the comments section below. Callie from Canada is the one asking it. I know that a lot of folks go to your local liquor store and get the boxes that have the dividers in them. I know other people that will put socks around the jars. You know, anything you can do to cushion them from too much rattling or bumping up against each other. You obviously don't want the boxes tossed and turned, you know. But anybody that has any other suggestions on how to move with your canned goods, please toss them in the comment section below for Callie, because that's a really great question, and it's a conundrum that some people run into on a pretty regular basis. And so I know that our viewers, as amazing and brilliant as you all are, will have some really great ideas to help Callie with her move. Congratulations on your move. Melissa Johnson, can you use plain salt to can? I was buying some salt and noticed they have iodized salt and plain salt, which I assume has no iodine. Also, is the only issue with the salt, the table salt, is cloudiness. Okay, so I'm going to put a link down below regarding salt. Okay, so that'll help you drill down some of it. But basically, pickling salt is the best one to use because it has the finest grains to dissolve easily and results in a clear liquid that highlights the bright colors of the pickles inside the jar. You know, that you want it to look appealing. A lot of people want it to look appealing. Okay. Using table salt in your pickle brine will result in cloudy, murky liquid because the anti-caking additives are not water soluble. So it just doesn't look good, you know. Table salt is the worst salt to use in your cans, but in a pinch, it will do the job. If you do use it in canning, avoid iodized salt, as iodine tends to give canned goods some unnatural, funny shades of color that aren't normal. So nobody wants purple pickles. And I'm not saying they'll turn purple. I'm just saying that the color will change. You know what I mean? So it's best if you're pickling something to find a canning salt. I have used kosher salt, which is not as fine, but it also doesn't have the iodine in it. And it does just fine. But I steer clear from table salt because of the anti-caking agency that is in there. It doesn't look good. And I'm all for ugly chicken, but not so much ugly pickles, you know? Okay, so Lachenacres. I just finished 22 pints of bread and butter pickles. I used the steam canner and loved it. Awesome. Question, I had one jar that the bottom blew out of. What went wrong? It was a new, never used ball jar. I made sure all the jars had the right headspace, the water. All jars sealed and headspace was correct on all the finished jars. So it was a fluke. Seriously, it was a fluke. And that's the best answer I can give you without having been there, okay? But most likely there was a defect in the jar that would not be visible, you know, by the naked eye, and so it blew it out. And that's unfortunate, but I don't think that you did anything wrong based on the fact that the other 11 came out unscathed, you know? So good question, though. Joanne 60823. I just discovered that the chicken breast I pressure canned in June, I misread the time and canned them for 65 minutes, not 75 minutes, at 15 pounds of pressure. I'm at 1,265 above sea level. Can I reprocess these pints or must I throw them out? You have to pitch them. It's been too long. It's, you know, we're at the middle of August here. So I would pitch them. That would be my safe bet. Okay. Somebody might say that if you open the jars and you heat up all that chicken and make sure that you heat it up to like 210 degrees, I believe, that it will make it safe, you know, but, yeah, I personally, I would pitch it. And I think I have a story to share with you later on in this video. Somebody asked me something, so, stick around and you'll hear my story. Let's see. Bella Southward says, I canned up some cannellini beans and ended up with no liquid in the jar. Beans absorbed it all. They sealed good, but they look mushy and the top beans are exposed and dry looking. I could probably use them as soups, but are they safe to eat? They are safe to eat. It sounds like you added too many beans. You didn't mention how you canned them, whether they were, you know, raw packed or whether you actually cooked them according to the National Center for Home Food Preservation. So they should be safe to eat, you know, and adding them to soups is probably the best way to do it. So, Mary Beth Ham, have you heard of canning lids and jars by the name of Pure? I have. And our friend Jeni Gough, over at Jeni Gough, Gough, she has a channel, and she did a few videos regarding Pure lids. And from what I've heard so far, most of the experiences are very good. So they now have a second generation lid out. When the first ones that they did had a white compound, and I think some people had a few issues with it, but the new ones have the compound that we're used to, that orangish color, you know, and I think it's a little bit thicker. So the second generation, I believe, are even better. But you can check out her videos. I'll put a link down below and see what you think about them. So far, I'm hearing pretty good things for the most part, okay? Sir Charles and Mr. Winston Beans asks, I'm looking into doing pressure canning versus water bath. However, I have a glass top electric stove and saw it was not recommended for pressure cooking. Thanks for any info, Linda. Okay, so Linda, the first the first thing I can suggest is to get hold of your manufacturer of your stove and see if you can do pressure canning on the stove. Okay, that'll be your tell right there. Some say to do it, but they have precautions to take. And if they say don't do it, then I wouldn't do it. Now, you say you're looking at getting into pressure canning. If you have not purchased anything yet and you cannot use your stove, then I'll put a link down below. There is an induction plate and an induction canner that you can use together to can on your countertop, okay? And it works really, really well. I'll put those links down below for you. And that's another great alternative to be able to can when your stove isn't agreeable to, pressure canning. Great question. Okay, so Judy Holbrook, I have a question about purchasing canned kidney beans, number 10 size can, because it is such a large amount of beans. Can I pressure can them into smaller portions, pints, for stocking my shelves? Okay, so a lot of people seem to be running across these great deals on number 10 cans of stuff. And because you're going to have to pressure can them. They're already cooked, and you're going to have to pressure can them for 75 minutes for pints. So that's reprocessing them again, which is going to deteriorate even more the nutritional value, depending on their ingredients. If it's high in sugar, you might scorch them, and they're going to be mush, So no. I would caution against number 10 size cans, because a lot of people seem to be doing it thinking it's a great bargain. But if you're not willing to sit down and eat a number 10 size can of whatever it is, it really doesn't pan out to be all that great. Unless you have like a family reunion coming up next week, but it's a great question. But no, that's not the best way to do it. Okay. John at the Trucker's Hi, John at the Trucker's Kitchen asks, I sometimes use Better Than Bouillon ham. It states on the ingredients that it contains flour and cornstarch. Is it safe to use in beans for short-term storage, like when I carry it in the semi, and would use it in 2 to 3 weeks? So the general consensus is, okay, that you cannot use anything that has flour or cornstarch. That's the general consensus. So you're looking at short term, you're looking at a couple of weeks, you're going to do it. I would probably go ahead and do it. I mean, and in full disclosure, my Fiesta Ranch beans, if you look at the ingredients on the Fiesta Ranch mix, I believe there's a little bit of flour in there. But you're using a very small amount in the jars. And so I'm erring on the side of Rebel and canning them anyway. So would I do it for long-term storage? Probably not. And, the purists are going to say that, they can't guarantee that the heat gets through it and all this other stuff. And I get it. I really do. I understand. But I think for what you're talking about, John, and in your circumstances, that, you might be okay. But it's a chance that you're going to take. I'm not recommending that you do it. I'm just saying that for what you're talking about, I think it might be okay. A lot of people use Better Than Bouillon in their canning. That doesn't necessarily make it right. That's not approved, but a lot of people do it, and that's the best answer I can give you. Sorry. Severin Koski asks, I live for your canning chat videos. I hope there's a little bit more, but thank you very much. What is the biggest mistake you made when learning to can? Would you believe, okay, so this is kind of tying into that other question. Would you believe I was well into canning by the time I made this mistake, okay? But it was a learning experience, definitely. So I canned up some salmon. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know that annually I get about 10 pounds of salmon, and I can it up in the middle of winter, when I've got time. And I was going off memory. And that is when I learned that your memory is not all you think it is, okay? And I canned it for 75 minutes in pints. Fish is canned for 100 minutes in pints and never in quarts. So I lost 10 pounds of salmon because of that, okay? So that was one of my big learning experiences. So it happens to all of us. All of us make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Now, on YouTube, a lot of people are going to show you stuff. We can edit stuff, you guys, and that's why I intentionally leave some of my oopses in, okay? Because I'm not perfect. I don't even claim to be. Half the time, by the time nighttime rolls around, I'm lucky to remember my name. So definitely, we're not all perfect. We all make mistakes. Check your stuff before you start. Make yourself a list before you start. Don't rely on your memory because it's not all it's cracked up to be. Great question. Thank you very much. Okay, so now, where am I? Carolyn Bradshaw. 2 questions regarding safely altering a recipe. If an approved recipe calls for blanching a vegetable prior to pickling, would it be unsafe canning practice to raw pack it instead? No, it's not unsafe, but they recommend blanching it typically for a reason, okay? So you're talking specifically about pickling. It's normally, there's normally a reason for it, and I would need to know. Let's see. For example, okay, I followed your pickling Brussels sprouts, in which you filled your jars with unblanched sprouts. I love the finished product. I later saw that an official recipe calls for 4 minutes of blanching. And see, I don't like mushy Brussels sprouts at all. I mean, at all. Okay. So, no, it did not affect the safety. Number 2, does pickling brine need to be hot for safe canning, or would room temperature brine be safe to use? Hot. Hot. You want it hot. Okay. There's a reason for it, I'm sure, but you want it hot. So those are my answers to your very good question. Thank you. Debbie Shipman, I did not hear the timer go off on my water bath tomato sauce, and by the time it dawned on me that they had processed for double the time. They all sealed and looked great, but are they good? The water level was below the top of the jars. I'd like to avoid dumping the whole work. Well, I'm going to assume, let's assume, okay, that you had water above the jars for the necessary time. And then anything below the jars, anytime the water was below the jars was an added time. I wouldn't say that it's unsafe. I would say that you need a louder timer. But it's not unsafe because it was at least an inch underwater. So those probably boiled a little bit longer than even you think. They should be good. They should be good. And, I would keep them. Yeah. Kelly Carter. I canned sweet Italian sausage. I saw another YouTuber person can sausage. Next I canned potatoes. Some of them have mush in the bottom. Some jars look like potatoes. Some look like creamy mashed at the bottom. I followed recommended guidelines. Did I do something wrong? Okay, so you were just telling me about your sausage. Okay. So, potatoes. Yeah. Potatoes have starch. And I don't know what kind of potatoes you used. You did nothing wrong. It says that you followed the recommended guidelines. So potatoes have starch. And what happens is, as they sit in the jar, that starch sinks, And so you're fine. That's what they are. And she wants to can every weekend. And I totally get it. I totally get it. Vivian Sullivan. I'm new to pressure canning, and I will be buying an all-American canner with a 14-quart jar capacity. Do I have to have a full load of jars each time? Also, can you recommend a good canning preserving book? Thanks so much. So, I'm assuming there's a reason that you want the 14-quart all-American. It's great if you need to process, that much food at once. Otherwise, you might be better off buying a 921 and what is it? Or a 925 and what's the other one? The small one, the 16-quart one. Because, then you can do small loads, and then you can do 7 quarts in a batch with the 925, I believe. But you're kind of stuck when you do the big one. And I think you can get both of those for around the same price as you get the really big one. Anyway, back to your question. So, they base the time on the capacity in the canner. That's part of the timing. So you would want to can jars of water. You don't have to put a lid on them, but you would want to have the jars in there with the water in them, in order to can. It just helps with the density in the canner, to bring it up to pressure at the time that it's supposed to. So overall, yeah, fill the canner, even if it's just with water. Okay. Franny in West Virginia. How can I keep my tomatoes from floating using the raw pack method? I know they are safe, just ugly tomatoes. You answered your own question. They're safe. They're just ugly tomatoes. It's what tomatoes do. It's just what tomatoes do. So just tuck them next to the chicken and walk past them and go, you're ugly. Okay. Oh my gosh. So Kay Geisel RN was recently told that if I pressure can 4 quarts of something, I need to fill the canner with quarts of water to fill the canner for even heat distribution. Yes. Okay. So that's what we were just talking about. Pardon me. Yes, that is what you need to do. That is the safest bet when you are canning, because they do base their information on a full canner. The Sticker Farm. When finding used canners at estate sales, thrift stores, etc., how do you tell if the canner was ever run dry and therefore not usable? The seller may not know the history of the canner. So the easiest way is to look at the bottom. If the bottom looks warped, okay, then there's an issue. And that's, just turn it, look at the bottom. Also look down inside of the pot, and if there are pits in the bottom, then that is an issue also. So those are the 2 major tells when you're looking at used canners. I hope that helps. Doreen Crawford, it's me and only me. I am wanting to can in very small sizes. When I can meats and veggies in jelly jars, do I use the time for pints? Yes. Yes, you do. Use the same time for pints. And it's like if you're using the 8-ounce jars, you do it for the same time as pints. If you're using the 1.5 pints, you do it for the same time as quarts. Okay? Great question. Linda Russell, where might I find a replacement gasket and manual for the Miro 0512? I will put a link down below for replacement stuff for all canners, so you'll be able to look there. Jacqueline Iverson, I canned ugly chicken. Boop, boop. My second batch, I distributed chicken left to can in 7 quarts. A couple jars were 3/4 full, 2-inch headspace. Is this a no-no? Correct, it's a no-no. Your headspace is very important, okay? So if you get to that point where you're not filling the jar, then it's best to add liquid, okay, till you get to that proper headspace. Headspace is important with all your canning. Headspace is important. I roll B. I bought a Presto canner from Art Deco era for just a nickel. It has a seal. The seal is hard. Is that the way it should be, or should I replace the seal? It has a jiggler. How can I tell the jiggler's weight? There's no numbers in the weight. I'm in a flood zone, no elevation. Wow. Okay, so there's a lot here. So my first thing would be to go to the link that I mentioned below for replacement stuff. Find out what kind of canner you've got. Find out what the brand is. Find out all that fun stuff. That seal is no good, okay? The seal should be, rubber like a belt on your car or anything else. It's not hard, so that seal is no good. As for, I can't tell you anything about the jiggler without knowing more about what kind of canner it is. So maybe you can find information about the canner at the link down below, and then you can let me know what's going on. Linda Nagy says, I had canned up some pint-sized pinto beans. After a week, the liquid turned black gray color. Are they bad? No. I mean, if you canned them for the proper time, pressure, if you followed procedure, then they're not. Beans sometimes just do that. I don't know what to tell you. Beans just sometimes do that. And when you empty the jar, they'll be normal color, and rinse them off. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. It's the starch out of the jars. Mrs. Maggs, do you mostly can on the weekends, or do you try to get small batches in during the week after work? All of the above. Do you use a smaller canner for smaller batches? I only have a 23-quart Presto and thought about getting a smaller pressure canner for small batches. My thought is that a smaller canner would take less time to bring everything to pressure and to cool down. That is exactly why I have my 16-quart, because it does take less time. And it's really great for weeknights. Huge difference for weeknights, if you're trying to get to bed before the sun comes up. So yeah, that's the way that I do it, and I would recommend. Chris Harrison asks, your help or opinion on canning creamed corn, your thoughts how to and why or why not to can it. Okay, so on the National Center for Home Food Preservation, they have the entire process there. Pints only, 85 minutes. And they give you the pressure depending on your elevation, okay? So I'll put that link down below for the cream corn. Good question. Good question. Carlene Holtz. I have canned jams and applesauce for years. When I say canned, I mean I had the jars and lids hot in boiling water. Then I filled the jars, screwed the lids down, covered them with a towel, and waited for pings to say the jars had sealed. I had never had a jar not seal. Is this an acceptable way of canning these items? Your thoughts, please. No, no, no. The canning process, okay, by putting them in the water, what it does is it vacates the excess air in the jar. Okay, just because the jar pings does not mean it's safe. You have to actually can it according to the proper process. So no, those are not acceptable. Not for anything. Anyway, no. Neither is turning them upside down. So you have to put them in a hot water bath when you're doing that kind of stuff. Tennessee Grands asks, when I can pretty chicken or ugly chicken, the chicken always seems tough and chewy when I open a jar. Any way to avoid that and make it more tender? Thank you. Basically, it's the kind of chicken. So some people, and I'm not one of them, but some people think that the chicken breast is more chewy, okay? Whereas the dark meat, like the thighs, is more moist and less chewy, you know, and tough like that. So I would try dark meat and see if you like that, and let me know. Joanne Fortune asks, in the process of canning, my All-American canner started leaking water from the lid because I didn't set it properly. So I turned the canner off 20 minutes before the canning time and let everything cool overnight. The next morning, I removed the old lids, which were sealed, and I replaced them all with new lids, wiped the rim, and then started the whole process over again. Is this safe to eat? You caught it in the 24-hour time frame. So I think so. Is it a practice that you should do on a regular basis? No. I personally would have put them in the refrigerator, you know, overnight. But because it was in that time frame, I think that you're okay. So you're good. CC December 2018. Is there a specific rule of thumb for how much water or broth to add to raw packed chicken prior to canning? No. Because the whole purpose of raw packed chicken is not adding liquid. Raw packed chicken is just that. It's chicken in a jar. Ugly chicken. And if you want the liquid in the jar, then par cook your chicken, cut it into chunks, put it in there, add the liquid. Okay? But no, there's no water is necessary. No broth is necessary. Devin Adam asks a few questions. Okay, so number one, I'm making up all of the DIY dry mixes, and I noticed the onion soup mix recipes. One recipe calls for 4 teaspoons of onion powder, the other for 4 tablespoons. And the magic amount is the second video. I might have put the wrong thing. I'm going to have to go check that out now, but it's 4 tablespoons because of the amount that you're making. Number two, on occasion, it's near impossible to see obvious venting. So, is it considered venting once I hear the water boiling in my Presto? No. Once I waited about 20 minutes just looking for steam in different lighting. Never saw it, but finally put the Jiggler on anyway. So, if you don't see it, you should be able to feel it, okay? And you want a good, steady stream of steam. So, you're bringing that water up to pressure and it's venting the steam out. And you want, if you can't see it, and I understand sometimes it's difficult, sometimes you can hear it, and then you can always feel it. But be careful because it's hot, okay? And then a third question. I canned ugly chicken, lots, but one jar didn't look sealed. 2 hours out of the canner. I pushed the button down and it's sealed. Is that a false seal? Yes. Stop pushing the buttons, okay? She marked the jar, but it's still sealed on my shelf. Tossing it. Yes, you're tossing it. Yes, you're tossing it. Because that's not good, okay? So don't touch your jars. Leave your jars alone, okay? Alana Peters says, I canned venison several years ago and the taste was good. However, it gave us tummy trouble, so I haven't done it again. I'm considering trying again with meat prices going up. Is there something I can do to the meat to prevent this problem? So what most likely it is that you're not used to the venison, okay? Canned venison, if anything, has always been easier on my stomach, and I prefer it. I prefer the taste of it even more than, you know, just pulling it out of the freezer. So another way to do that is to maybe mix it, half venison, half ground beef, or just kind of slowly add it to your diet a little bit more, or add in some ground sausage to it, you know, par cook the sausage and add it in. That's another way to do it, so that you have something that's more familiar to your digestive system, because venison is a natural, it's nature's finest meat. It really is. and it doesn't have all of the stuff that our bodies are used to. And so you may have, you know, some acclimation issues there. So I would probably do that, or just cut it when you go to use it. I mean, if you use, you know, if you're making goulash, use one thing of venison and one thing of ground beef, you know, and mix it together. And that way it's not all venison that your system's trying to get used to. Okay, Zen RVN says, can you vacuum seal in canning jars the bacon crumbles? No, you cannot. Okay. No, you cannot. They're not good. At that point, I'd put them in the fridge. That won't help them. That won't help them at all. Sorry. Laura Hunt. This is probably a really crazy question. No such thing. When I got my All-American canner, it came with the round piece that says 5, 10, or 15 on it, and I need to know if this is the jiggler that you're always talking about. Okay, so the jiggler that I'm always talking about is specifically for a Presto pressure canner, and that's that's a nickname that it was given. It's a weighted regulator, and the regulator that you're talking about for your All-American is a weighted regulator, so you're good to go. You are absolutely good to go. You just put it on the pressure that you're required to use for your area, and you're good. Linda S says, I froze tomatoes to can later. I let them defrost on the counter for 30 minutes. Skin came off great. Isn't it great the way that happens? But there's a lot of water versus juice from the tomatoes. I drained the clear water and added some fresh tomatoes for juice. Is there any way for them not to have so much water? No, I mean, and that's perfect actually, because then you've got less of that excess water that you need to cook down. So that's kind of the preferred thing to happen. You want that to happen. That water, okay, that clear juice in there is the melt off from freezing the tomatoes. And so you don't want that in your sauce because you just have to cook it down anyway. So it's perfect. Run with it. You're doing great. Birdie Boatwright. How long can a jar of ugly chicken stay on the shelf? Well, it's not there to look at. Okay, that is always my caveat. It is not eye candy. Well, it is, but it's not. So the standard answer is 18 months. Okay, but I have it on my shelves for 2 years, 3 years. You can have it up to 5 years with the understanding that over time the nutritional value does decrease a little bit. But if it's canned properly, you can have it on the shelf for years. Carol Hopfner. I canned ugly chicken, and in the processing, the jiggler didn't entirely stop, but came close. So I started the processing time over. Will the chicken still taste good, or did I overprocess? It should. Well, number one, you did exactly what you're supposed to do, okay? If it stops, you're supposed to start over. It didn't entirely stop, but it came close. So I'm thinking that you were right there on the cusp, and you could have kept going, okay? But you started the time over. Better safe than sorry, in my opinion, always. So it's still going to taste good. It's still absolutely going to taste good. And it's something that you and your family will enjoy for some time. You guys, this was very exciting. It was a great Q&A session. A lot of really good questions. I have a couple bonus ones now from some emails that I got in. We received a couple of emails, and so I'm going to answer those questions. One of them is from JL. And she says, I've been canning for a number of years, and every 12 boxes or so, I would come across a random lid that has a little ding, not a dent, but a little ding or impression on the lip of the lid, or a smear of pink sealing compound across the center of the lid. I've always looked at these kinds of lids as somewhat suspect and put them aside to can with last. Can something less expensive, like pickles rather than meat, etc.? So since COVID shortages, though, I'm seeing quality control diminish, and I see these outer lids much more frequently. How safe is it to, 1, can with a lid that has a ding on the top? Are these lids more likely to have seal failure? Without actually seeing them, I guess it's possible. You know, you want to make sure that the rim is intact, and the rest of it should be okay. And then number 2, can with a lid that has a smear of sealing compound. I run across these all the time. I figure that's just a manufacturing, issue where, it just smeared a little compound. So those are fine because, they're food safe, BPA free, blah, blah, blah. So there's not a problem there. Great question. I'm so glad that you emailed me. Thank you very much. Gail sent me an email. And she watches every canning chat. Thank you very much. Started canning last year with great success, only a few failed seals. Fantastic. I'm using a Presto 23-quart canner on my flat top stove. Yes, I checked with the manufacturer. Everything was safe. I am puzzled by an issue I occasionally have. And when it happens is when I have a jar that doesn't seal. The issue is some jars come out of the canner bubbling and boiling, and some aren't bubbling and boiling. The ones that aren't are the ones that don't seal. And she gives an example. So this is something that actually some of our viewers brought to my attention, because I never made the correlation, and I don't always still make that, now I pay attention to it because they brought it to my attention, but I still don't always have that correlation as far as results go. But sometimes if it's not bubbling and boiling, it doesn't seal. I don't know why. I have no words of wisdom there. Her and her husband wonder if it's possible temperature change with the electric burner. I don't think that's it, because then all of your jars would be impacted. Okay. So, it's just one of those things that happens. I really don't have any words of wisdom for that. Maybe it's siphoned a little bit, and so it didn't seal completely, at which point it didn't contain the pressure to cause the cooking that causes the bubbling and boiling. But I have had jars that did not bubble and boil that did seal. But, I've been trying to pay a little closer attention when I can to see, if that's happening more frequently. I don't run across it a whole lot, but it does happen on occasion, and it makes no sense. I have no really great answer for you, but it is a really great question that we run into. A lot of people have run into it. And like I said, I didn't make that correlation until our wonderful viewers actually found that. There are going to be a ton of links down below to answer a lot of these questions, so I hope that you will check them out. This is a really long one, so I'm probably not going to be able to timestamp everything this week, but I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you enjoyed the questions. Remember, if you have questions that need immediate replies, please send them to my email. I now am checking my spam folder regularly. If you just have a question in general that you want addressed on the canning chat, drop it in the comments section below and we will answer it. If I haven't answered it and you've asked a couple times, please mention that second time, when you put the question up there, and I will make sure that it ends up on here. Thank you for joining us for another canning chat. I love talking canning, and so this is so much fun for me, and I'm glad that you are all enjoying it. Remember, if you like what we do here, please hit that like, subscribe, and share. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook. And until the next time, be safe.